Hey, everybody, welcome back to another edition of the Successful Seniors Podcast. I'm Don Cote, and I'm going to be your host. Today, I'm talking to a gentleman by the name of Mike Muhney. Now, Mike is definitely a successful senior. He's had a lot of success in his life, and he's an expert in a number of fields, including software engineering, as you'll hear from him directly. But, like most of us, he's experienced some struggles along the way as well. And he'll tell you that those struggles are what informs the way that he finds meaning and purpose in his golden years. And I can't wait for you to hear his story. So without further ado, let me introduce you to Mike Muhney. In here with Mike Muhney, and I'm going to let Mike tell you his age, but he is definitely a successful senior. Welcome, Mike.
Thanks, Todd, for having me. And we'll get the bad news out of the way first. I'm 74 years old.
74 young.
74 young. Definitely 74 young.
Fantastic. Well, listen, what my listeners are really and viewers are really interested in is what causes somebody to be successful in their senior years. What I'd love for you to do is tell us a little bit about your past and how you got here and why you're still going strong at 74 young.
Okay. Yeah. Well, I was born and raised in Chicago in a blue collar family. So, nothing special, no silver spoon in my mouth. First kid to go to college. I went to college to become a lawyer because I was, I'm the oldest of six kids. So, in a poor family with six kids to feed and, parents, so 8 of us to feed every day. I had to pay my own way through college. So my dad worked for a general contractor in Chicago. And when I was 16 and beyond, they allowed me to be a laborer. I was making $7 an hour in a $1.15 an era minimum wage. So I was making a lot of money.
Wow.
And I paid my entire way through college. That's important for me to say that for this reason. I was accepted to law school. But after graduating from the University of Illinois in Urbana-Champaign, there was a concrete truck driver strike in Chicago, and Chicago's a union town. So I was unable to work for a whole month before all the issues were settled. That month of no working prevented me from having enough money to go to law school for the next year.
Wow.
Okay, so the strike got settled. I went back to work as a laborer, now with a college degree. And a good friend of mine came up to me and he said, "Have you ever thought about going into sales?" And I said, "No, why?" And he said, "Well, I think you'd be pretty good at it. There's a job opening in where I work." And where he worked was at IBM. I'm talking the IBM in the mainframe era. There was no PC industry. And I said, "Well, you know what? It beats digging ditches for the next year." And he said, "Well, I'll make the introduction. Then you're on your own." At that time, if you got accepted at IBM, it was lifetime employment. And the first thing they did was give you an IQ test. So I had an IQ test. I probably just passed it, but I passed it. And then I obviously got accepted to IBM, and I graduated in the top 10% of my nationwide class, and I had a very successful IBM career. But as I have always reflected back on that, what IBM taught me was principles, not sales techniques. They did teach the techniques and fine art of selling, but what they mostly taught us were principles. That's important because 10 years later, my best friend and I had always said, if we ever have a chance, wouldn't it be great to own our own company and, and work together, because we would vacation together with our families and all that kind of stuff. Well, the PC industry emerged in that era. And so the day came where we said, you know what, we can start a company now. We wrote a software product in Lotus Symphony, for those that are old enough to remember that. It was a configurator for salespeople at the computer stores where we once originally had to go to buy PCs. Computerland, Businessland, Entree, MicroAge, places like that, right? And make a long story short, we raised $100,000 from an angel out of Boston for that product, and $85,000 later that we had spent, Pat and I said to each other, the other co-inventor of Act Software, and make quick correction here, we didn't create the industry called CRM. we created a new category because we had to. There was no category for it called contact management. What's
Wow.
contact management? Software designed for people who deal with people. Do you deal with people? Yes. Well, it's for you. Uh, Contact management grew later because of its success and what ACT did, which is still on the market today, by the way, 38 years later and over 40 million users, and now on its fifth owner. But anyway, it grew into CRM. So it was the catalyst that created the CRM industry. Okay. So he was coming down in about a month, and Pat and I admitted to each other that our product called the Margin Maker was a failure. And we literally said to each other, this dog ain't gonna hunt, it's dead. And we didn't know what to do. The only thing we came up with was, we have $15,000 left. Maybe we should just not spend it. And when the angel comes down, we'll just say, we're sorry, we failed. You want your 15,000 left that we have. And that's what we were prepared to do, but we didn't want to give up. I mean, there still was that survival instinct. It just so happened that one of the principles IBM taught me was always call at the top, the CEO level. I don't care if it's General Motors. If you get assigned the General Motors account, you make an effort to meet with the CEO. A company that big, you might get delegated down to somebody, but they'll know the CEO wants you to be talked to by that person, by the CEO. And so that was my DNA, call at the top. Well, one of those computer stores was headquartered right here in the Dallas-Fort Worth area called CompuShop, 54 stores. If I could have made that sale of Margin Maker, that would have been a big deal. So I finally got to see him. And when I first met him, the day I walked in his office, and he was taller than me and with a deep voice, while we were shaking hands, he got up from behind his desk. He said, how the hell did you get in here to see me? Like, you're a sales guy. I'm the CEO. You should be dealing with my purchasing department. My quick response to him was, Mr. Patel, I know your executive secretary better than you do, and she let me in. And he started laughing, and the ice was melted. That's important to know, that principle that IBM taught me that became my DNA for this reason. When Pat and I said this dog ain't gonna hunt, simultaneously that same week, there was a weekly publication in the computer industry called Computer Reseller News. And that week's edition was the annual edition of the 25 most influential people in the entire PC industry. I'm talking Bill Gates, people like that. And guess who one of those 25 people were? John Pertell. Wow. And when I saw that on the cover, I went, oh my gosh, I know. He let me call him John now, because I did tell him about Margin Maker, and he said, I do like that idea. Talk to purchasing, but keep me posted. That was the open door he gave, right? Okay. So when I saw that on in the newspaper, I went, oh my gosh, we got to go talk to John and see if he can give us any advice on what to do. Pat and I called him up. He said, sure, come on over. We went over to see him. We told him why Margin Maker was dead. And this is what he said. You know what? You guys are smart guys. Next week is July 4th, 1986. Why don't you go have an 8 till noon brainstorm session and just see if you can come up with another idea before you throw in the towel? Well, we could still afford coffee and toast. So Pat and I did meet at a restaurant on July 4th, 1986. We were in the booth at a Holiday Inn hotel with pencil and paper. And we said, we're sitting here till noon, no matter what. We got to come up with an idea if we're going to survive. And it was at that breakfast that what became ACT was conceived. And I still have the original napkin of the idea and the rudimentary menu structure we started to build once we realized we were onto something. And basically we said this to each other, two things. We both have the same kind of career background, so neither one of us is stronger than the other, so let's give each other veto power. If we come up with an idea, if the other person doesn't like it and they say, I veto that idea, okay, no more effort to try to persuade you to do what I think is a feature of this software product. We obviously were headed towards a software solution. We were software entrepreneurs. So that was number one. Number two, we said, we have a blank piece of paper. Why don't we start with saying, is there anything that we need? Is there anything I wish that I had that would make my life more productive and better? And that's how it started. Well, what exists? And we were looking at our daytimer paper system, which is what most people had back then. And we said, you know what? That's an interesting concept because that helps us organize activities. But every activity in that book is connected to a person. Why don't we flip the coin and look at it from a relationship standpoint rather than the activities? We still want to combine them. And that was the thread that we started to pull. And now we had, well, if it's going to be a software product, then it needs to do this. And 9 months later, almost to the day, April 1st, 1987, ACT was on the market. From conception to literally on the shelves in the market, and people started buying it, and it was a hit. I don't want to say from day one, but after about 3 months, it was definitely on a steep slope upwards. And from that moment on, Pat and I did become celebrities in the industry. I mean, and I won't go into that. That's not the purpose of this call. But so now we were, I mean, if you could find your passion in life, the thing that you went to sleep thinking about, you woke up thinking about, you couldn't wait to get back to the office. It wasn't work anymore. It was fun. There was ACT. Okay. Now I will say at this point that ACT did become my mistress. And because of that, I mean, when ACT was so successful, I was invited to speak all over the world. I mean, we literally had red carpet treatment, Pat and me, in that era. Okay. Well, I lost touch with my wife, and I lost a 19-year marriage. It is important for me to say that. So I paid a very high price for something that was a great success in my life, and basically one of the legacies of my life, if not the legacy from a business standpoint. All right. So we built up the company. After 6 years. The competitive environment was encroaching because of the success of ACT. And there was an article in the newspaper one day that Microsoft was creating this product. It wasn't on the market yet, but it sure sounded like it was going to compete against ACT. And so, make a long story short, our board of directors, of which Pat and I were 2 of our 8 total board of directors, we decided to put feelers out in the market secretly and see if anybody might be interested in buying us. There were 3 companies that immediately responded, and make a long story short, we did sell our company. To this day, I will say, Pat and I, right now, this very moment, still and always will regret selling our company, because if we had stayed in business 1 more year, we would have been a public company. I mean, we owned 85% of the market, and that's not my percentage. That's a documented percentage that I have publications saying ACT owns 85% of the market. We created that category. We owned that segment of the industry. But make a long story short, we sold the company, and I was 42 years old. Now I get into you kind of finalizing answering your question. What do you do when you're 42? Well, let me tell you this. The company that bought us, Symantec, the CEO at that time wanted to diverge and diversify from their what they were known for. And we were put under a 2-year employment contract. 4 months later, Pat and I were both fired. Okay. I mean, and the reason we were fired is because we would not keep our mouths shut. We thought, you bought us, you're a big company. We got all these resources now, people and money to further promote ACT. And Pat and I had a lot of ideas where we still wanted to take ACT to even greater heights. Well, the marketing department resented us, and they complained to the CEO, and the CEO came up to Pat and me one day, and he said, "Shut the F up. We bought you. You did not buy us. Just do what you're told." Well, that's not Pat and I's style. We don't do what we're told. When you're an entrepreneur, you're pretty much a rebel. At least you have to have 1 rebel chromosome, right? I probably have a few. But anyway, we didn't keep quiet, and we got fired. Now my world was torn asunder, Don. My identity of all of these past glorious years of the life I was living and the satisfaction that we were bringing to people. I mean, you can't believe the adulation of people. If I meet an ACT or ex-ACT user to this day and they learn who I am, I kid you not, they want to take a selfie with me or they want my
Yeah.
autograph on something. It's kind of funny. I get a
I'm
kick
a
out of it.
producer back then.
Well, thank you for having been a customer. But the point is, we touched people's lives. We changed people's lives. In fact, we created a lot of people's businesses because it gave them the ability to do what they had a love, wanting to do or a dream of doing. Okay. I'm 42 years old. I have no identity anymore. It's gone, gone. And I was in the wilderness, as I'll call it, for a long time. So I will tell this point story to answer your question on the journey to where I am today. I didn't know who I was anymore, and I didn't know what I was anymore. And so I was praying about that all the time. God, I don't know what I am anymore. I don't know. I mean, I know who I am. I'm Mike Muhney. I'm a software entrepreneur. I know all that, but what am I? I'm not anything. And so I was on this quest, and it took about 2 years before an answer came in watching a movie. I was watching Indecent Proposal, for those that might have remember or ever seen that movie. Robert Redford, Demi Moore, Woody Harrelson. It was, and so without getting into the story, other than Robert Redford lusted after Demi Moore, and Demi was married to Woody, and he paid her $1 million to spend one night with her. And so that was the movie, what the movie was about. So Woody Harrelson was this brilliant architect, brilliant one, and they had been building their dream home on the coast, and the economy fell apart, and he lost his job, his company went under, everything, and now Demi's with Robert Redford. So he got a job as a architectural instructor at a community college, way below his level, right? And even the dean of the community college said, you're way above our level. And he said, so abuse me, right? Because he couldn't find a job. The next scene was he's in the classroom with students packed to the walls, and it was a 2-story kind of a barn, and the students had their legs hanging over on the second story, and the camera was on their faces. They were immersed in every word he was saying. So he has a huge screen behind him, and he pulls out a brick. And I'm watching the movie, like, you watch a movie, and he all of these icons in the world are going on the screen behind him. The Taj Mahal, the pyramids, the Empire State Building, architectural beauties of the world. And he held it up and he said, Louis Kahn said, even a brick wants to be something. And then he said it again, but with a different cadence. Even a brick wants to be something, or something to that. And the moment he said that, I kid you not, Don, I literally started crying because I finally got my answer of what I was. And what I was determined at that moment to this very day and to my dying day now is I recognize that what I am is simply a brick. And a brick is what is part of what become great structures. So if I want to be part of a great structure, I've got to be that brick that fits myself into something to be part of that. And that is a never ending quest. So
So I feel like people are going to replay that part many times because that's winning right there. I love that. Please continue.
I actually did make a clip of it. I got the clip of that in some presentations that I give. When I publicly speak, I typically don't use PowerPoint or Keynote. I mean, I talk from my heart, right? But I do have that clip because it does demonstrate deeply and emotionally the power of an image or a music, a tone, whatever, right? An event that changed your life. Well, that one changed my life. And just like the guy who worked at IBM and saw something in me that I never thought of going into sales. By the way, I never went to law school, right? I never intended to be in the high-tech industry, and here my career turned out to be in nothing but the high-tech industry. So,
story.
Yeah. So to get to today, so why am I doing what I'm doing? You're right. I don't need to work. I can play golf every day if I want to. I do play once a week, but and obviously when I did sell when we did sell ACT at the age of 42, I did take about 5 years off total. And my kids decided to live with me. I have three young kids at the time, and they chose to live with me rather than my ex-wife, who moved back to Chicago. I stayed in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, and I became a Mr. Mom, and I truly became a Mr. Mom. I mean, taking them to the doctor when they were sick, going to school, PTA meetings, all of that stuff. And I reconnected with them, which was a challenge in and of itself, especially with my oldest child, who was 16 at the time, because I was gone for most of his high school events. He was a gifted athlete. Anyway, so the reason I'm doing what I'm doing is I view myself this way. First of all, you have to understand with the adulation that I kind of described that I still get from people. The way I see it is people see me at this level, right? But I see me at this level because I know the price that I paid to get where I am. And there was tragedy along the way. So, I mean, think about the irony of creating ACT. It's all about better and closer relationships, right? And here I lose probably one of the most important ones that people have, their spouse. I lost my marriage. And so there was irony in the tragedy. Having said that, though, ACT is also what saved me when we were going through the whole divorce and post-divorce, because it was my safety net. It gave me reason to live. So when we were fired, Pat and I were fired, and I lost my identity, I said to myself back then, if I could achieve ACT, if that's all that I am able to do in my life, and I'm only 42, then what good am I the rest of my life? I mean, is the rest of it just going to be anticlimactic? Do I just give up? And I came to this conclusion: success should be a springboard and not a hammock, right? So if I could do ACT, which again, I was going to go to law school. I wasn't going to be a software entrepreneur. Never even, first of all, when I was at IBM, I don't even think I ever had heard of the word entrepreneur. It wasn't an entrepreneurial culture back then because there was no PC industry.
So about IBM, if I could interrupt, as far as I remember, is they were 100% focused on hardware. I remember the story of them, telling Bill Gates, the money's in the heart.
Yeah. I mean, obviously I was a mainframe sales guy, but the only reason that people would need the mainframe was for the software that it ran, right? To do payroll and accounts receivable, accounts payable, and typical things back then, the manufacturing processes. Anyway, that never has left me, Don. And so it's very deep in me. You have to understand, if I can do ACT, which is something way beyond what I ever would have imagined, then what more is in me to still achieve? Let me go back to one of the other IBM principles that we were taught. So I want you to pretend, and your listeners to pretend, that we're all, 21, 22, 23 years old, and we're beginning our first job that we're excited about, right? So here on my first day, the way IBM worked back then, everybody hired in that calendar month constituted your national class. And for the next my national class was comprised of 66 of us. For the next 6 months, we were going to be together in weeks-long boot camps multiple times during the 6 months. And then we'd go back to our branch offices. So, and I graduated number 6 out of 66 students. Anyway, I lost my train of thought here for a moment.
Shows the competitiveness.
Okay, you're right. So on the first trip where they put us all together was in Atlanta, Georgia. We were going to be together for the next 2 weeks, bunking together, 4 guys, 2 at a condo, and and blah blah blah. We really became a close-knit group. So it's our first day of class, and it's only the first 15 minutes of the first day of class, and this changed my life forever to this day, which is the reason I just gave you the answer of why I'm doing what I'm doing today, is because of this event. So the guy said, the teacher at that time, starting off the class, said, there's only 2 types of salespeople in the world. there's jackasses, and we all laughed. And this is exactly what there's jackasses. They can carry a heavy load, but you constantly have to kick their ass to keep them working. Okay. None of you are jackasses. Well, that was kind of nice. No, he said the only kind of people we hire are what we call wild stallions. Now imagine you're sitting there, and in all likelihood, you would have never conjured up an image of yourself as a wild stallion. But now he put that on all of us. And I'm thinking for that microsecond or seconds, wow, I'm a wild stallion, which conjures up in anybody's mind today, determination, fierceness, independence, running through the hills of Montana, right? Whatever. But this is what he said. But by the time we're done with you in 6 months, you're no longer going to be wild stallions. You're going to be thoroughbred racehorses. And it was like, oh my gosh, they didn't even give us enough time to see and allow ourselves to see that we could elevate our thinking. They took us to an even greater level, because the number one most important thing for anybody, if they want to be successful, is how do you see yourself? Because how you see yourself is how you carry yourself. And how you carry yourself is how people interpret and characterize you, and how people characterize you become, in many ways, what we call your reputation, what others say about you behind your back. So character is
that
what
was PhD level information. I hope everybody pauses, rewinds, and writes all that down. That's gold right there.
And so again, I don't know that I truly felt and understood the depth of that impact at that age, at that time, that would deeply resonate and plant itself in my DNA. But it's still part of the thing that gave me the determination and Pat to step out from our corporate jobs and start a little software company that had an initial failure, blah, 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 right? And so I don't want to give up. I mean, what is there in life to do but an effort to try to make a dent in the world and to make a positive impact, however that may be, a volunteer to charitable organ, starting a new business, or working with, your spouse on something that is your, mutual passion. It doesn't matter. There are new pathways to find to take you to what you were intended to be all along. So in my view of myself, Don, I don't think I've arrived yet in what God has fully determined me to become. He has given me parts of the pathway on that journey, but it's not done yet. And I'm not going to give up until my dying day to hopefully achieve 100% of what I was put on this earth for. That's my story.
I love that. Mike, let me take that and then ask this question, because I'd love for you to take a minute and just share your advice from where you stand in your life. What advice can you give those people that are trying to figure out how to make their golden years their best year? What advice do you have for that segment of our audience?
That's a question that I'm not sure I can completely answer. I don't pretend to be, that kind of a deep thinker. I can just tell you, from my heart, number one, I have a very positive outlook on life. Obviously, I've had my ups and downs. I'm a human being. I have depressions at times. I mean, but who doesn't? But I have ultimately and fundamentally a very positive outlook of life. And I have a confidence level that obviously has been established over many years. And I don't mean in arrogance. I just mean I have a confidence in what I can do and what I can't do, what I do like, what I don't like. And that's just part of who I am. I think it's important, especially our ages, for older people, that we exercise, physical exercise, just to keep strong. I never stop learning. I am a subscriber to Hillsdale College's free courses. I've passed many courses that are free. Things ranging from World War II, Churchill, the Constitution, communism, and of course you get a certificate. So I'm constantly in a state of wanting to learn something new. Okay. Kind of going back to school, if you will, to keep my mind strong, to be able to have a discussion ad hoc in any environment that I'm put in with other people. I definitely believe in the power of networking. You have to engage and socialize with other people. Uh, there's nothing but bad comes from, turning inward and kind of avoiding, the outside world. I personally stay away from social media. There's always a dark side to something beneficial. Social media, I mean, I've reconnected with cousins that I played with as a kid, but you kind of grow apart as families expand over the decades, right? So from that standpoint, yes, it's good, but I don't participate in social media because it's too volatile. It can be destructive. And I'm not interested in it. To me, it's a waste of time. There's other choices to make. Uh, if social media was only about family and your true closest friends, then great. But it's not. I think it's a misnomer that Facebook even started calling everybody, connected to you friend. I want a friend that they're not friends and they never will be. So, I stay away. Obviously, we have our political aisle that we're on, or what side that we're on. I don't really get into politics that much. I have my opinions and I have my principles, and I stick to them. And obviously, I associate with people of like mind, but I'm also not closed-minded, and I have friends on the other side. And I mean, we're close friends because we find common ground. So I don't find things destructive. I find things constructive. Um, and I guess it's just, an attitude of damn it, torpedoes full speed ahead, Don. I just don't want to give up. I mean, I don't want to sit and watch. I had the luxury if I want to, or I could stay up late, sleep late in the morning, eat bonbons all day, and, whatever. That has no appeal to me whatsoever. It's so boring to think, is that what you want? My grandfather, my dad's dad, in his era, what he loved doing when he turned 65, he retired and he watched baseball every day. He was a baseball fan. He at least was engaged in his passion. He just loved the game of baseball. Okay. But to me, that's boring, just watching baseball every day or watching a sport game every day. So I want to get out there and be part of something, do something, be active. And that's basically my cocktail mix, if you will, Don.
I think that brings up a really good point. First of all, the health and fitness part, I think, is really important. A lot of people struggle with mobility as they get older because they become sedentary, and that's really important to keep moving. My wife and I did 3.5 miles this morning.
Okay, good for you. Yeah.
So that's number one. Socialization, isolation is that sentence. But here's what I think that it becomes the missing element, and I just want your take on this. I think the missing element when we leave full-time employment is the lack of feeling productive, or that you're making a difference, or you're having impact, or you're changing people's lives, or you're changing the world, or whatever someone would describe it, that lack of contribution. So if someone's in that state, what do you recommend they do to be able to kind of find that reignite passion, bring something that would light them up? Well, how would you go about it if you were in that position?
I forget who made this quote. I didn't make it up. I don't know if it was Walt Disney or or Carl Sandburg. But the quote is this: "Nothing begins without a dream." Okay? Nothing begins without a dream. And so I think maybe the very foundational first step is to dream. What are your dreams? Or what if you say, well, I don't have any right now. Okay, well then what were your dreams? Maybe you should recharge them, recalibrate them, reinvigorate them, whatever. But why don't you just sit back and think, if I had always intended on, or I always thought if I could, I would, I would just allow myself some meditative, investigative thinking. And if I had a Walter Mitty life where I could have been something different than I was, what would I have liked to have been? Maybe that's a launch pad, for example. I don't know. But that's what I would do. And that's what I basically did do. That's why I started a company, our software company, 2 years ago for the product we're going to be releasing soon. It's like I had fun being a software entrepreneur. So why don't we do this again? It's
Right.
not work, right?
You probably remember who this quote is from, and I'm going to butcher it, I'm sure, but it sounds something like it's never too late to become who you should have been, or something like that.
Yeah, I get it. And here's another quote that comes to mind. And I do know the poet's name. It's John Greenleaf Whittier is the
Oh,
poet.
Whitney.
Yeah, and this is what he said. Let me take here. Here it is. Of all. Now think about in the first two words, he dismisses. There's no excuses. He says, of all sad words of tongue and pen, the saddest are these, what might have been.
Wow. And you remember it word for word.
Of all sad words of tongue and pen, the saddest are these, what might have been. So let me answer your question coming at it from the back door. I don't want to continue my days that I have left on this planet thinking what might have been. And the only way to avoid that is to finally put my foot in front of the other foot and get going. You remember we're obviously of an age where you might remember the famous trapeze family, the Walensky's, okay.
The Flying Walensky.
The Flying Walensky's. I forget which one of them made this comment, but he made this comment, whether it was the dad, the founder, or the sons, or whatever. He said the most important step is the second step. He said, imagine getting ready to step out on a trapeze. He said, both feet are on the edge of the building you're on, right? The launch pad, if you will. And you put your first foot on the trapeze. Your other foot is still on the building, right? You still kind of have that stability, but you're not going to get anywhere if you stay there. The most important step is the second step to commit. Right. And just try it. Okay, you fail. Failure is not a bad thing. I mean, I've had, obviously in my journey, I did a lot more than what we have time to talk about, but I did have some other companies I tried to start, and two of them failed. I wasn't afraid of failure. Okay. Obviously with Pat and I back then, when we had that famous breakfast, we wanted to survive. We didn't want to admit failure. Oh, by the way, let me just for your audience's benefit, let me finish this story about ACT. So we had that breakfast, and after that breakfast, Pat and I knew that we were onto something, and I codenamed ACT because I didn't come up with the name ACT yet. I codenamed it YES, coming from IBM, an acronym-rich company. And YES stood for yes, everybody sells. Everybody in the world is a salesman. I don't care if you're a doctor, lawyer, engineer, accountant. Do you have competition? Well, yeah. Well, then you're a salesperson because you want to try to win business, right? We all are salespeople. We might be an engineer in what we do, or a lawyer or accountant or a doctor, but we're a salesperson, right? So we furiously began to design the product and architect it before the angel came down a month later because he thought everything was cool. So when he finally did come down, we picked him up at the airport. We took him to lunch. His name was John McNair. And we had lunch, and then we said, John, we have bad news for you and some good news. And thankfully, he was a very calm man. He said, well, what's the bad news? And we said, well, Margin Maker is dead, and here's why. And we answered all of his questions. He said, okay, well, then what's the good news? Well, we have this idea we've been working on. We're codenamed Yes right now, and here's what it is intended to do, blah, blah, blah. And this is what he said when we were all done. And he could have given us a thumbs down saying, yeah, I want my 15,000 that you have left back. Sorry, you guys, failed. What he said was, I didn't invest in Margin Maker. I invested in the two of you, and I like this idea better. Do you need any more money? Oh my gosh, we did not anticipate that. And we said spontaneously, Pat and I said, yes. And he said, how much? And we had no idea this was ever going to be an option. So simultaneously, both of us said the same thing at the same time, $50,000, because we thought, well, he'd given us 100, right? So as we reflected back on, how did you come up with 50 and I came up with 50? It's because we thought, well, 100 was too much there since we kind of blew too much of it in the. He literally pulled out his checkbook from his sport coat at the restaurant table and wrote a $50,000 check on the spot. I called up John Pertell, the guy that's had this brainstorm breakfast, one of the 25 guys, in the industry. So we went to see John, and we told John, we took your advice, we had the breakfast, we came up with an idea. The angel loved it, and you're not going to believe it, but he invested $50,000 more, and this is what John Pertell said. Talk about principles having reciprocal or value down the road that you can't even imagine, right? He said, you know what? I like that idea too. And I have two other close friends who might be interested in hearing about this as well. Why don't you guys come to my house later this week in the evening? I'll have my two friends come over and you two guys do your pitch. Pat and I went over to his house later in that week. We did the pitch to those three guys and we left with $450,000 in handwritten checks to fund the creation of what became ACT. And we were this close to destruction and giving up, but we didn't. And you've got to have that character in you. You've got to have that chromosome of saying, I'm not going to give up no matter how bad it looks. There's got to be something, and I've got to challenge myself to find whatever it is.
That principle can be applied at 25, at 35, at 55, and at 95, right?
Yep.
Doesn't matter how old you are. And I believe that the more passionate you are and more invested you are in some kind of project that makes you feel like you have a value in the world, that prolongs, gives you longevity, prolongs people's lives because they have something to live for. Because if you don't have anything to live for, why not die? Right. And so I am so grateful for your input and your wisdom today. Thank you so much for being on the show. And I hope we can do this again real soon. Maybe after you launch your product. I know you'll be really busy, but I would love to be able to put that out into the world because I believe my seniors are going to be productive and they're going to be needing a product like that.
Okay, well, I appreciate it. So we've created a landing page, a website where you can provide your email address if you want to keep informed as to our progress and release. So the product is going to be called Contatta, which is an Italian word spelled Contatta, Contatta.com. Contatta means in Italian, make contact.
Nice.
And so go to Contatta.com. And give us your email address and you will be on the list to know, when we finally go out to the market.
And I'll put that in the show notes as well. So Mike, thank you again for coming on today. I know your time is really valuable, but you've given us a great gem. Please.
You're very welcome. My pleasure and honor, Don.
Bye for now.